This is our vineyard taken in August when we had the nets on to protect against the bird damage that they'll eat you out of house and home for sure. And so you can see some shelter belts and the boundary we go down here. It's about 40 acres and it's quite a chore. We've been using what used to be known as Korean natural farming practices. We've been doing that for 4 years. And we've done biodynamic practice in 2010, 2014, 2020, and 21. And I'm now in the process of biodynamic certification. So natural farming is how it's actually written by Chow, the person who wrote the book in the modern age. It's a lot like biodynamics. To me, it's like if you have a pair of gloves and you leave one behind, it's hard to make chop wood or haul prune vines or anything. In my way I've developed farm practice, I need natural farming biodynamics that really put your feet on the ground. Now here's the dilemma. I heard a farmer say, I can't understand how I get this wrong. A plant is composed of 50% water, 50% dry matter, and of that dry matter, 47% of that is carbon, 43% oxygen, 4% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen. Of course, all this comes from the air, and only 3% is our minerals. And what do we spend all our money on? We spend all our attention to how do we manage these minerals? That's only 3% of the dry matter that constitutes what we call a plant, a grape plant or whatever you're growing. And they said they can't believe how many just screw it up so badly sometimes. And I think sometimes people are just focusing on the wrong aspect. Why focus on what 3% of the total matter, dry matter, is when you can concentrate on how do you get the rest of the stuff into the plant? So natural farming inputs what I have to make here, and that's the beauty of this, like biodynamics. They want you to make your own product. So I gather my own microorganisms, that's IMO. I make my own lactic acid bacteria and enzyme bacteria. That's a very important product. It's fermented on the farm. Photosynthetic bacteria, that's just plants that have photosynthetic bacteria on it that's used to make the type of lactic bacteria that I make. Oriental herbal nutrients, brown rice vinegar, and plant-based fertilizers. And all of this, you have to become pretty good at fermenting. And it's an easy trick, but you have to be mindful of your temperature. Modern day farming practice is much more, it isn't like you're going to return to the past way of farming, the way my great great grandfather did, or return to the ancient way of farming. Because if you do that, you're likely to fail. There's a lot of information that's scientifically proven and out there, but it takes a bit of research in order to understand why you're doing what you do, not just as you blindly do it. Both organic and biodynamic can become that in natural farming as well. You just do this and it will work. If you don't understand, you're going to run into pitfalls. But the nutritional cycle that the Korean natural farming or natural farming actually promotes is you've got a nutritional growth stage, a changeover period, and a reproductive. For a grape plant, there's about a month of initial growth before the inflorescence actually flower. Then there's a 2 or 3 week period there when you're in the changeover. And then in the last bit of that is the reproductive. Now for corn, that could be up until the corn ears start coming out of the stalk up through tasseling. That's the changeover period. Reproductive is growing your corn. And so that's how you split up your the type of nitrogen or phosphorus, potassium, minerals that you're going to put on your plant. So I don't want to delve too far into this, but the big point about is every plant is different. So you can't take this, what I do, but these are general recommendations. You have to balance your carbon and nitrogen. If you put on too much nitrogen, you lower your carbon nitrogen ratio under 20 to 1. And a lot of plants are 10 to 1, 8 to 1. And that means you've got excess nitrogen. It'll cause low plant sap brix, and you'll be invited in for a big pest and disease problem.
Hey, Greg, we're not seeing your screen anymore. Oh, there you go. Never mind. It's back.
Okay. Did you not see this slide?
We could see it now. But like, yeah, now
Oh,
we can see it. Yeah.
that's interesting. So here's some of the machinery. I have a flail chopper, of course, a tractor, and I use that to chop up the vines. Roller crimper, that's the big one for knocking down plants. I don't mow most of the year, although you see some haymaking equipment here. And this is my net retrieval and application machine. Here's some Core 10 steel posts and galvanized wire I use for the trellis. And here's my 500-gallon Growing Solutions compost tea system with and you can see of the discs here that put micronized bubbles into the vat when it's brewing. But tea is tough in this area. You can't make compost tea when it's too cold. So that means early spring when you really want it is hard. And then in the summer, you really need about a day and a half, 2 days to make a batch that can proliferate the biology you're putting in there. I feed turkeys year round with a heated water pot, and there's some turkeys eating the grains. And these people don't require any training. These turkeys, they go down the row, three abreast in a row, the next row over, so on, so on. And they just are wonderful to have around. They're good buddies of mine. Here's my bee apiary with insulated bee box. Now, this is one of the books that was written and transcribed by the Hawaiian group of the Cho Global Natural Farming people, and there's a characterization of Master Cho, who has that. Actually, kind of looks like that. They did a pretty good job. It's your basic manual on what you're doing and how to do it. And here's the formulation page that lets you know here's your nutritive and your crossover and your productive phase. And this is seed soak and soil soak when you're planting things. And these are your oriental herbal nutrients and things. We won't need to go into that because it's not meant for here. And here's another one that Korean Natural Farming provides, telling you during the vegetative and the crossover period and reproductive what nitrogen and what other components ought to be used. So it's pretty handy to have that. Now, this is the book that Matt, and we call him Master Cho, everybody who works in natural farming. And I always called it Korean natural farming, but I found out he didn't. He wrote the book. He calls it natural farming all the way around. I think the moniker stuck because he is from Korea, but he learned all that he needed to know from Japanese farmers, from 4 farmers who continue to use ancient methods. This is back, he didn't graduate from high school until he was 26, and yet he's a genius because of the Korean War. So he's of that vintage of era. And this, and along with his son, they wrote another book that gives you the actual how to make the inputs for natural farming. His son also said, well, this is getting kind of complicated. He wrote Jadam Organic Farming, and that's probably a better entry point for most people. I would recommend. The books aren't expensive, but you could explore both if you're interested in it, because this Jadam book is what a lot of people wind up using. Now, here's the traditional method. Can you still see this, Angela?
Yes. Yep. Looks
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Okay. This is traditional manner of collecting indigenous microorganisms. You have to collect your microorganisms from your field, from your plot, from your backyard. And traditionally it's done by using cooked grain, put in any kind of basket. You can put in a plot, a cardboard box, a wooden box, any kind of container, even plastic. Microbes are everywhere. They're going to attack that, and you're going to get that white fuzz like this up here. You mix it, weigh it out, mix it, rice and all, with equal amounts of sugar, and that's your IMO1. I make it in a different manner. You can see the picture on the left here. I have a lot of uh, old piles of hay, wood chip piles. Everywhere I set up, I have about a dozen spots in my farm. I put a pile of hay about a foot high that's about the size of your dinner table. And this time of year, since it's been dry, I'll go out there and I'll put 10 or 15 gallons of water over the hay and onto the ground. Or if you're establishing new, put 10 gallons of water in the area, then put hay over top or mulch, leaves, whatever. Leaves are an excellent cover for this. What this does is create habitat for microbes to proliferate, and you'll collect IMO, indigenous microorganisms beyond your belief. What I do, I hire the co-op to grind a ton of oats. I lay it out, they grind it, deliver it. I lay it out in a ribbon about 15, 20 feet long, 2 feet high, and I collect 10 5-gallon buckets of soil at that interface between a leaf mold or hay and a wood chip and the ground. So I take a little bit of soil, a little bit of that, and I spread it over the top, mix it with the tractor, and I use water. You have to use a lot of water. And I mix my the natural farming inputs, lactic acid, bacteria, OHN, fermented plant juice, at a 1 to 500 ratio. So it isn't much. It's like a pint in 100 gallons. It's that kind of rate. Lactobacillus bacteria, that's your star. That when you pitch that, here's the recipe. If you go to Jerry Gillespie YouTube videos, he'll teach you everything you need to know about how to make lactic acid bacteria. That you use in almost everything. Although it's a facultative anaerobic process, it does make it work. It provides you a finished product almost used all by itself that provides a very rapid breakdown of organic material into a plant available form. This process is just amazing. It does work initially if you cover your pile, as Jerry Gillespie would show you. He's worth the research, and it will work in the aerobic process until oxygen drops below 6%, and then it will decompose as a facultative anaerobe. But it produces a plant matter and changes it from the mass that you put in there into this beautiful, rich compost, and in a very short time, especially for cover. I'm talking about 2 months and no more than that. And it's rich stuff. Now, the Oriental Herbal Nutrient, I make it in gallon jugs of each, and there's 2 parts angelica root, cinnamon, licorice, garlic, and ginger. And it's fermented, it's hydrated with water. No, excuse me, beer. That's what they use in Korea. Beer is to rehydrate it, and sugar to ferment it, and alcohol to actually extract the enzymes. It's a source of enzyme bacteria, which helps the plant induce systemic resistance to disease and pests. In other words, it raises its level of resistance naturally. Fermented plant juice, also part of natural farming. You take any rapidly growing plant and on your place, and you can make a 5-gallon bucket. I make a 55-gallon barrel bucket, and I collect it. I grab the top of the plant, and I cut off below, so I get about the top tip 4 inches of growth. That goes into the barrel. I chop it up a little bit, equal weight of sugar and that plant material. 7 days, you've got this liquid gold. This stuff you could drink. I haven't ever done it, but it's really beautiful. It's used to induce desirable plant growth and disease resistance, but it's got the hormones in it because you grab the tip. It's got all the auxins, gibberellins, the cytokinins that are fighting it out for supremacy on a plant. And that's what you need. And boy, does that ever make a difference. Brown rice vinegar, I make my own out of old wine that I have. You dilute the wine 50%, and then I pitch in a apple, and I make probably 10 gallons of that in a year. Enzyme protein fermentation, also called fermented fruit juice, that in a large crock or barrel as I do it, you put your fruit and equal amounts of vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, that kind of thing, and you add a certain amount of sugar. And this is an enzyme that is a biological catalyst and accelerates chemical reaction within the plant, accelerates growth, and induces plant to reach a higher order of cell protection. In other words, it raises the plant sap brix. I use sea salt. This is all NOP certified and organic sugar in my process. The seed soak is something that we make up. That's a fermented product also. I had a few other products not shown. But it's interesting in natural farming, when you bring a plant into your place, if you buy a pot plant, for example, you take that out of the plant, living plant or dormant, doesn't matter. You knock all the dirt off, make it bare root, put your hose on it, just blow all the dirt off, and let it dry for an hour or two. Then you put it in this SES product and let it soak that up for an hour. Then you plant it. And the first time I did, I thought, man, I must be nuts. But by gosh, it works. The plants take off. Even if you have a plant that was growing, all I do usually, if it's live, is I cut back the tips so that it doesn't have to worry about the oxygen interface at the growing tip. It works.
Greg, can I
Liquid
ask you a
plant,
question?
yeah,
Would that work for strawberry plants, strawberry starters, the crowns that you before
yeah.
soak in them before you plant them?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And all it is this it's this recipe, but of course you wouldn't have Oriental herbal nutrient fermented plant juice, but that's a catalyst to cause the enzymes to react. Now the liquid plant fertilizer I make in three 55-gallon barrel drums, and I go out with a lawnmower, and when the dandelions are just coming up and you got that yellow flower popping, I mow all that. I fill up 3 barrels, fill it with fresh rainwater, put in lactic acid bacteria, a handful of rock dust, put the lid on. You have see an airlock right here, and that is fermented for 3 or 4 months. That's a slow process. It smells a little bit, and when I get done, I take the lid off. Even though that barrel was full right up to the brim with dandelion plant material, not packed in hard, but pushed down, there's almost nothing left. 95% of the volume is gone. It's all liquid. I had this analyzed, and it's a beautiful fertilizer. So many parts per million of virtually everything that's in your soil. And you take it from dandelions because they have a really deep taproot, so they're getting that full soil profile of all the products you have. So these are my spray inputs. When I spray anything, I have an extract from I take compost extract tea from Johnson Sioux compost, then my natural farming inputs, lactic acid bacteria, fermented fruit and vegetable enzyme, then as required, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace minerals, and I'm going to show you later on why I decide that. But here's my goal. I want to raise a healthy plant and provide healthy grape clusters for the winery and maintain the plant sap brix of 12 degrees brix or higher. So what horticulture practices are required? This is what you have to figure out. So let me get to this, and I want to show you what this looks like. So you have to know why you're going to put something down in biodynamics and organic.
Greg, you might
So
need to
here
reshare your screen. We're not seeing the PDF.
it says you are screen sharing.
Yeah, you might need to stop sharing and then or share your whole screen or share the PDF. We can see your slide deck.
Okay. Well, okay. What I'll do, I'll just get out of this and
Or okay.
it's a PDF of plant sap.
And I can
Uh,
share that with participants too, right? If you send it to me, I can share it.
yeah, what's important, you don't see it is what I was able to achieve. Um, there. So the point I was going to make with this is in 2021 we had no phylloxera damage on our grapes, and the grapes are prone to that. And phylloxera is just a sucking insect. It's the plague that damaged all the grapes in France in the mid 1800s. And it comes up, eats the leaves, it bites the leaf and creates a gall, lays its egg in the gall, and the next generation comes forth. And so if you have Dr. Thomas Dykstra is one of the people. I made this chart by hand from a lecture he gave, If you keep your brix up at 12-degree brix, plant sap brix, you're going to have complete resistance to insect damage and disease, especially, and you can see this chart. Can you see this, Angela?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you put on any kind of pesticide, you're going to decrease your plant brix. And this is proven. And if you have a plant sap brix of greater than 10 brix, you're going to reduce any need for fungicide protection. And if you get above 14 or 12, you're going to have almost complete resistance to any kind of plant sucking insect. So here's this chart right here to help you understand. If you're in the 6 to 8 degree brix, which is good for a lot of plants, you're still going to have aphid scales, mealybugs, those kind of plants eating on it. If you're in the brix range of 7 to 9, sucking insects such as our phylloxera, thrips, mites, stink bugs, lanternflies, they're going to be attacking that plant because that's at a level where the amino acids and the accumulated nutrients, they can digest that. But if you get above 9 degree brix, now these sucking insects can't get a foothold. They may bite, but that's all they ever do. But if you're in the 9 to 11 degree brix, chewing insects now can eat. So that's leaf miners, Japanese beetles, caterpillars, and so on. If you're in the 10, 11 degree brix on your plant sap, grasshoppers can and will eat your plant. But if you look at this chart, when you're above 12, these insects, they may light on your plant, they may take one bite and they're gone because there's plenty of other fields around. This is when I first saw this chart, I I had heard about this a dozen years ago, and it was poo-pod. But it really, when I did my 2021 and 2024 uh, plant sap analysis, I found out that in 2021, my brix level was 12 degree brix, and the winery won double gold on the wine made from those grapes, and I had virtually no phylloxera damage, no galls, nothing. 2024, I didn't apply any extra minerals, and the problem was I got phylloxera damage on plants on one variety front and agree that I had a plant sap brix of 7. So it fits right in with this. Another variety in the same vineyard had a plant sap of 9, had a little damage, but not bad at all. And I have really come to buy into this, why my goal is to get my plants above 12. Now, here's the basis for all this that in modern terms, this Healthy Crops, a book, A New Agricultural Revolution, Francis Chauvisol from France. He has numerous, this is a difficult read. It's a technical book, but also lots of reports from other scientists to corroborate. And he said you have to understand the nitrogen story. It's a conversion of N2, which is the atmospheric form of nitrogen, into the soil via a mineralization process to ammonium, then to nitrite, then to nitrate, then to amino acids. The plant does all this, by the way, at this point, and finally plant proteins. It's in that final metabolism form of protein that makes the plant structure grow the way it does. But our agriculture practices, if we spray any kind of insecticide, fungicide, herbicide, is going to disrupt that critical stage when a plant is converting the amino acids to proteins. It accumulates the amino acids, and that will reduce the plant sap brix and will cause for disease and insect problems. It's an important thing to understand this whole cycle and what we do to plants that cause that problem. Of course, you can also have 11 inches of rain and flood the plants. That's also going to be a disruptor. You can also be in a long-term drought. And so you've got to understand, at least if you know this cycle. Now, that thing on the left, I didn't show a garlic press because I busted my fourth one trying to get plant sap brix out. And the one on the left is a vice grip. That doesn't work on grape plants. It will work on clover and a bunch of other things, but not on grape plants. You cannot get a single drop out of grape plants in that. You'd find it hard to believe, but the refractometer is on the right. That's a simple process. They're not that much money. I've had mine for 20 years and I use it every summer. This is what I use. It's a wheatgrass screw press. That's the screw on the right here. And I got this kind of secondhand for under $100. And that's almost what this costs. This is ineffective, this vice grip. This thing, I even measure food that we buy, organic food, and see what it's like. And I just know this much from testing. If you find a carrot that really tastes delicious, you're going to have a much higher brix than if you go to a grocery store thing that tastes like cardboard. So the Johnson Sioux vermicompost bins that we use, they're 150-gallon bins, and I put our usual array of stuff and I top it with leaves, and I bring this indoors, and it heats up initially about 120 degrees, but that's the type of degradation you want. It converts the stuff, and then of course when it reduces, I put European night crawlers in. Then just a few weeks ago, I planted cover crop seed in my worm bins. And I don't think you've ever maybe heard of that before, but this is sending down roots to feed the microbes, and there's worms in there. And if you pull back these plants just the least little bit, half an inch down, there's a bunch of worms underneath that root growing. So then when they get big, now right now, they're short like that, but now they're about 6 inches tall. And when it gets to be about a foot and a half tall, you can see I put grow lights on to provide, and it's on 12 hours off. But I'll take the growth that has a photosynthetic bacteria and use that to make my lactic acid bacteria. So I have to kind of work backwards from that when I start that process. And here's a timer that I use. You can see a plug in here and here. It runs two lights on 12 hours, off 12 on. Here's Biodynamics and Rudolf Steiner. This is a photo of Steiner. He was born in 1861 in what was the Austrian Empire, Slovenia, I think, in modern day. But he died in 1925, just 100 years ago. He was a famous Austrian clairvoyant, oculist, and philosopher. He's a genius. There's no doubt about it. And he delivered these courses that were recorded on agriculture in 1924, but he died a year later before he could actually provide proper guidance. So there were some disciples of his, Ehrenfried Pfeiffer and Marie Toon and a few others, who tried to make this work, put it down into a process that everybody can emulate, and it's complicated. This is me. I'm doing what everybody who has compost, I've got several piles like this. This one I covered with a tarp, and the others I've covered with hay. But you have to inoculate with a biodynamic preparation. In this case, I'm using something I purchased from JPI. It's a compost starter. It's got Biodynamic 500, which is cow horn manure, and the six preps. So what I do is I take these old Grolsch bottles or others, and I ferment them. Now, Mae Bruce, and I'll talk about her a little bit, she did all of this, but without using the official biodynamic preparation method. But if you ferment this and you pop that lid, it's like you shook a bottle of beer and then opened it. There's a lot of pressure in there with just a little bit of sugar. I have 2 teaspoons of prep and a half teaspoon of organic sugar in a bottle this size with reverse osmosis water, clear water or rainwater. And you let that sit. Again, it's got to ferment, so it's got to be at 70 degrees temperature or something like that. And when you take that lid off, these are a little safer because they aren't exactly airtight, but I spread them around. Biodynamics requires that you practice use of compost as a cover crop to feed the soil microbes, not mulch, not raw manure on the field like we did when I was growing up. So the science of soil biology is supported by this ancient practice. Manure must be cured with the preparations for at least a year before you use that. Immobilization of nitrogen Remember, we studied about the mineralization of nitrogen when you take N2 and you go to ammonium and nitrite, nitrate, amino acid, and protein. Now, if you don't do this right, you're going to immobilize nitrogen in this way. If you have something that's a high carbon to nitrogen ratio, so there isn't much nitrogen, it's mostly carbon. You can think of straw, mulch, corn stover, wood chips, anything like that. If you add that to surface, or even worse, if you incorporate it, the microbes can't break it down. Microbes, bacteria are the biggest scavengers in the microbial world. They're the miners of the soil. But they have a carbon nitrogen ratio of 4 parts, 5 parts carbon, 1 part nitrogen. They can't eat only so much of the minerals and raw product you put in there without also ingesting some nitrogen. That's just the way they're made up. And so if you put this stuff on the soil or in the soil, and that's all you do, and you don't put enough nitrogen with it, they eat all the nitrogen in the soil, and they're not going to give it up. Contrary to what you may believe, they're going to tie up the nitrogen, and they aren't going to give it up unless they die, and something comes along and eats that gives it to the plant, unless a protozoa eats a live plant, or through rhizophagy process in the roots themselves. And I'm not going to go into rhizophagy, but you must study what's happening. This explains the deep, dark secret about the quaint idea we have about a plant sends down root exudates, carbohydrates, and sugars to and exchanges with the bacteria for food, and then the bacteria gives the plant what it needs. Rhizophagy actually explains that in a way that makes sense. You should study that. So we first compost the same raw products for a period of months, and the microbes in the compost pile break all this raw product down into a plant available form, and only then is it ready. If you're going to study biodynamics, don't start with agriculture course that Rudolf Steiner. You will have hazy eyes before you put the book down because you won't understand it. It's really difficult. So read these first. Results from Biodynamic Sowing and Planting Calendar, Maria Thun, and I think she was from Germany or Austria. Um, she explains the zodiac, how the celestial cosmic forces actually work, and then she shows what happens if I plant a radish on a flower day, a root day, a air day, and so on. And she shows actual results. It's pretty believable. And it's a life's work of hers. Some people claim it doesn't work. I don't know why they say that. Uh, Here's an interesting one. May Bruce. She came of fame in the 1930s in England because as soon as the war started, it started there much sooner than when America was involved. This quick return compost she developed, she was originally in a biodynamic association in England, but they kicked her out because she asked too many questions and because she was a woman. You can find that not hard to believe. And she told them, listen, I'm going to part friends. Rudolf Steiner may have given you the biodynamic preparation process, but he didn't give you the flowers. It's the cosmic energy contained in these flowers, which is valerian, yarrow, dandelion, nettle, and of course, then we use oak bark and a few others. Uh, but she proved and believe it or not, in England during World War II, you couldn't find manure anywhere because there was just that much reduction. It was used for other purposes. And so she found a way to make this in what I call an anaerobic process. They didn't turn the piles. It's a pretty simple way to do it. And if you find this book, it's online and it's free now. This one, What is Biodynamics? Hugh Courtney. I worked with Hugh Courtney, long conversations in April and May of 2020. He died right after that, unfortunately. What's important, he covers his commentary and explains Rudolf Steiner's agriculture reports for part of it. But what he talks about, I found most intriguing, is the early lectures Rudolf Steiner gave to the world in 1910 and 15 before the 1924 agriculture course. And there he talks about the cosmic influences, the sun, the planets, the astrology, the astronomy, the zodiac. So it's a good read because it talks about those gnomes and undines and sylphs and fire spirits and things like that. And it's really fascinating. Barefoot Biodynamics, Jeff Poppin, the barefoot farmer, he's Tennessee hillbilly's got a beard down to his belly button, and he makes it fun. This is a really fun read and shows you how natural farming in biodynamics works. And then Raising Resilient Bees is one that shows you how to raise bees with biodynamic preps. This is what I buy from Josephine Porter, is Prepared 500, and Horn Silica. These are your principles. You have to put these on once a year. And these are the preps, and they have a number for each one of them, and you can read through them at your pleasure. Here's how I store them. I have a full quart jar. That's enough for my land for one application, and it's stored in peat moss, and it's got a breathable top, and you have to watch, keep it moist, but if you keep this covered in the basement, you're going to be fine. Now, the penetrometer test is important. This is another aspect of it. It's not fairy dust. If you can't get air into your soil, you're not going to have all the plant elements, the carbon that are in the air that need to get into the soil. Now, this was taken 2.5, 3 weeks ago. By now, there's still frost in the ground at 30-inch depth, but I was able to penetrate full depth at under 200 psi, about 175, 190 psi. That means I have air infiltration. When weather fronts come in, you can go down. That air pushes right into the ground, and every night the soil breathes in and then expels in the morning. It's taking in all these elements and is feeding the microbes in the soil, and the microbes make everything work. So I went down that far, and I showed this on the rod on the left. If you have a sticky soil that isn't very well aerated, you'll have clinging soil to this rod. It's about a 1/4 inch diameter, and you can see it's completely clean. Here I am in the aisle where I usually worry about compaction, but I can still go way down, and we haven't had a lot of moisture, but microbes are doing this job. That, along with cover crops, that's how you're going to break up the compaction zone. If you don't have one of those rods, here's a really simple thing. I have a tile spade. Everybody's got one of those long bladed spades, and they're about 60 inches long. Just dig the depth of that for a trench about 1.5 feet, 2 feet long. Then you don't know where this hard pan is or if it's even there, but you stick a knife in and you go upwards until you meet resistance. You can pull through it, but you know it's there. If you take a penetrometer in here, you can bury your penetrometer. There's just nothing resistance below that point. But if you take a penetrometer, come down, you're going to hit here. But you know, a lot of fields, you can't get down 2 inches. You can't even get through it with your penetrometer. So then you mark your spot where your knife hits that hard point from below. Come above, put your knife in the soil, come down till you find it. Then that tells you where your plow pan begins and ends and how thick it is. And then you can decide what you want to do to get rid of that plow pan. There's a lot of ways of doing it. Sometimes just something like jackhammer radish, any kind of radish that you can find, they will go through that. Alfalfa would typically go through that. But if it's really bad, in some soils, you wouldn't even get that to happen. But if you are mildly compacted, let's say it takes 300 psi to get through that, you can probably plant your way out of that. Mostly, you got to have microbes. Microbes will break that up. They invite the plants down. Plants can break through that, but if you pull it out, you'll see effects of root hairs above the hard pan, but below, there's no microbes down there. So it's going to help if you break it up. A good winter freeze thaw will help, but it's an alternative. Now here's the spark, like a carburetor that runs an engine. Electroconductivity. It's a simple method. You measure the amount of spark in ergs, energy released per gram per second. And in the springtime like this, everything's just coming to life. And I took mine out the other day, and the batteries were all dead. So trying to find some. but you should be 2 or 400 ergs. And then in full dungeon, middle of summer, you're going to be up in that 900 to 1,000. But some people are at 2,000. And that's because they've got a lot of salt in their water that they irrigate with or salt accumulation. And you got yourself a hot soil. It's not good for plant growth. This is Biodynamics B-frame. Biodynamics does not let you use foundation. They want you to have an unencumbered frame so the bees build natural comb. And these are my insulated bee boxes that are basically double deeps. So here's a celestial planting calendar for 2025. There are a number. Maria Toon Company sells them, and this is what they look like. I apologize for the glare, but they've got different color codes for the different days of the month, and it shows you the phases of the moon. Right now we're the ninth, so we're nearly at full moon, but we're in a descending mood. And on the 9th of April, we are at the fire, which is fruit. So right now, if you're working on fruit trees, pruning, planting, harvesting, anything like that, or leaf, or air for flower, and red for root for here's where they have this at the bottom of each month, and this is the moon's influence, kind of like a re-radiating cosmic influence upon the earth. And this is how Maria Toon actually developed this, probably one of the main authors of this exact information right here. And they also have an unfavorable time for when the nodes cross with the sun. And so I'm not going to go into this, but this is a simple guideline for growers. Look what day it is, what color you're at, go down here. You know, if it's a fruit day, if you're going to plant onions or potatoes, plant them on a root day. Flowers or lettuce or cabbage, anything like that, plant it on a water day. What this does, it tends to push you into a focus on, okay, I want to plant something. Really, I'd better off wait till Friday instead of today. And so you start planning like that, and eventually it makes you become unbelievably organized because you can say to yourself, well, it looks like Wednesday I can plant potatoes and Friday I can finish my pruning and blah, blah, blah. You find out that most farmers don't stick to this exact color coding scheme because usually you can't get something done. You get 3 recurrences of each of these color codes every month. These are a list of references that I'll, when you'll be able to see this later. Here's where you have options for getting your plant sap analysis. I took the Dr. Lane Ingham Soil Food Web course and just open your eyes beyond belief. Advanced in Eco Agriculture, John Kempf, he's really a great. And our local soil works, Glenn Ravenberg, you have to listen to he and Thomas Dykstra. They will really give you a grounding in understanding plant sap brix and why it matters. Jerry Gillespie and his spice composting, that is really an eye opener. And here's the Judam book and the Cho Gloop and rhizophagy. And Chris Trump, he gives you the practical how to make these natural farming ingredients, the inputs. Bear Mountain, they do an excellent job of not only showing you how to do this, but they integrate natural farming and Jadam and do an excellent job of explaining why they do what they do and when and timing and how to make it. It's really good. And then Jadam Organic Farm and Garden, full of that. Then Healthy Crops, that's the book I showed you. That's this book right here. I don't know if you can buy it anymore, but it was in 1985. Unfortunately, he died the same year it was published. He was under a lot of heat, no doubt. A lot of people thought he was quackery, but believe me, it is not. And then here's the Biodynamic Celestial Planting Calendar. So I've rushed through this, Angela. So we have some. If there's any questions, it'd be lovely to answer them.
We don't have any questions yet, Greg. So, yeah, thank you for that. Um, I had one comment though that I'll make, and because we do have a lot of certified organic producers, either transitioning or myself that's certified organic. And Greg talked about a lot of things. And so I just want to clarify too that if you're looking at doing any of your own homemade inputs or you're looking at using inputs, you do need to get it approved by your certifier before you use it. So a lot of this stuff, when we make compost tea too on our place on occasion, and so I actually see one of our certifiers on this call today. So we want to make sure that our certifiers approve of those inputs before we before we put them on the land, and they'll look
Well,
it
actually,
over. And so, Greg, do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, I do because I talked to the biodynamic certifier. They said, you know, natural farming is really part of biodynamics because they encourage you to make your own. But I said, how are you going to certify my fermented plant juice and my this, my that? They said, well, like organic, you have to have a justification for why you're using something.
Yeah.
Well, I use my plant sap, so I know I'm low in copper and zinc traditionally because my soils just don't have that in. And by the way, my fermented plant juice analysis showed I didn't have as much copper as I hoped in the plant, but my soil analysis shows I have plenty. So it's an easy thing. It might be in the soil. My microbes are not picking it up. So
Mm-hmm.
my sap analysis says it's not in the plant. So that's my justification.
Mm-hmm.
That should be just fine for accepting this product. In other words, I don't have to have it certified or lab analyzed. This fermented fruit juice, which is root, potatoes and sweet potatoes and carrots with fruit, that's an enzyme. I asked a couple of labs, how do I qualify what enzymes, what percent, what dilution rate I should use? And they said, well, for $3,000 you can find out. I said, well, I'm just going to use it because I saw good results. The results I see are you get beautiful grape growth, and I've been growing grapes for a long time, 30 years. You get growth that is unexpectedly robust with this product. And you just know it's different, and it shouldn't be that way. Secondly, you get where you don't even, in the end, you don't even think about worrying about disease. It doesn't bother you. I had grapes I held onto a vine because the winery wasn't ready for it, just a couple, 3 ton. And I held it for 10 days after the rest of the grapes in that same Brianna were picked. And I thought in the past, I told them, I don't know if they'll make it. They may rot right on the vine. They were as beautiful as you could see, and they were 10 days after full dead ripe on grapes.
Mm.
And normally you can't get by with that. That's another one. And then return growth and whatnot. But the plant sap analysis doesn't lie. Okay, my brix wasn't as high as I wanted it. It was 9 and I wanted to be 12. It was short copper, short zinc. It's not, it's there in the soil, but the plants are taking up.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, I did not put anything extra on, just Korean, the natural farming products. And so now I know it's pretty simple,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to test. I need to have plant sap on plants that have grown for 3 or 4 weeks and understand what's in that sap that the plant needs to make its structure and provide that. But I won't do that until it's
Mm-hmm.
about until I see that.
Yeah, so that's a good point is in organic, just documenting, like you're doing, documenting the need to know, where you're at um, and then just, we don't, this inputs don't have to be certified, but they do need to be approved by your certifier if you're going to be using new things. I was glad to see in the field day, even you showed it today, you're using organic sugar, and a lot of organically improved things. So just check with your certifier and a lot of that stuff if you're not sure. We're starting to make more things homemade on our farm too. Um, so yeah.
Now, they
Does anybody else
approved.
have any other questions for Greg? We're right about 4 minutes before the top of the hour. I don't see any questions, but
I'll say this much, Angela. If somebody wants to call to talk, I would be glad to speak to them on the phone.
okay.
Perhaps if anybody would want to ask Angela, Angela can give you my phone number. I don't want
Yeah.
to put it on your ways, but
Yeah, we can share your contact information for anybody who's interested in talking to Greg. I have his email address and phone number. You can just email me or Carrie, and we will get you that information so that
I do go to farms to help people, like for pruning
so you
practices.
okay. So you do some
For
consulting and advising
I
a little
wouldn't
bit.
call it because I don't charge. I just want to help people. So,
Okay.
thus, I hope that they understand I'm not going to be held liable if you screw it up, or misunderstood my advice, or I might not even know what to do if you
Okay.
don't have enough details to be able to show what's missing. But I can sure give you some good guideposts based on a lot of experience.